So when you know where my voice lies, do you really move your place? Turn my heartstrings back again. Without
Welcome back to episode 3 of the Negative Progression Records podcast. We are here today with singer of The Subtle Way, Jamie Tahirkheli. Hi, Jamie.
Hello, how you doing?
Good to see you again, as always.
Yeah, you too.
So The Subtle Way was a screamo band, and I say that with a lot of love and affection, not with disdain. Was a screamo
You have to
band.
make that distinction.
Sorry, say that again.
You have to make that distinction.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends, it depends on what era. You used to have to say that just about saying the word emo.
Yeah.
But yeah, so The Subtle Way was on Negative Progression. We released records, we released an EP until we have Faces. That was in 2007. Then a digital single, Man the Watchtower, the next year. And then the year after that, a full length, Thus Far the Channels Speak. Now, before that, you guys self-released a full length, Against Our Own Retreat, which was the record you sent to me. And that was in 2006, something like that?
5 or 6, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I received that, and just like a quick background for everyone listening to learn about The Subtle Way. I was still living in San Francisco at that time. I didn't move to California. I didn't move to New York until 2007 in the summer, because I was in school until 2007. So I was living in San Francisco, and you guys sent me Against Our Own Retreat. Maybe Marcelo sent it to me. I don't know.
We were probably all in the room when we sent it to you.
Yeah. And then I got in touch with you, and my memory was that this record was amazing. It blew my mind. I was just like, I had released a Burning Water, and they had some heavy parts, but I hadn't really released a band that was like pure, like Poison the Well, Thrice influenced screamo band. And so we talked, and you invited me to a show. And where was that show, Jamie?
Are you talking about the Irvington High School Battle of the Bands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when I saw you guys for the first time.
Yeah, I remember we had a long talk in the cafeteria of my high school after that.
Yeah. What was that like for you? Is that like totally weird? This like adult man was in your high school. That would never happen today.
I think we were all pretty excited because like even in that conversation, I remember you were like giving us a bunch of advice and teaching us things that we we're not exposed to, didn't really know about.
So at that time, it was you, Marcelo, Melody, right?
Oh, yeah.
Was that her name? Melody?
Melody, yeah.
Yeah. And Jason and Tony, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So anyways, what did you do in the band? Talk about how the band kind of formed and your role in it early on.
Sure, yeah. So up until very recently, like 5 years ago, The Subtle Way was the only band I was ever in, really. So Jason and I skateboarded together. We were in this big group of like 13 dudes that were friends that would like every day go to our friends Michael Caruso's house. And we'd take up like the whole width of the mall as we walked through the mall to go to like the Milpitas skate park in the Great Mall. But Jason and I were friends there, and Marcelo was also friends there, but he was in another band. So Jason and I just kind of started we both play guitar, so we both we started, fooling around, making
But
songs.
Marcelo skated too. So was he in a different like skate crew? Did you guys like battle at the mall?
No, Marcelo was in the crew. He was just in
Oh,
another band already.
oh okay.
Yeah, my heart collapsed. So yeah, Jason and I just started recording stuff. Jason played guitar and piano, and drums on the keyboard, and we came up. I think we wrote like 2 or 3 songs, maybe more than that, before we like really started to try to be in a band. And then yeah, I think
And how old were you at that point?
when we started, I think we were like 14. Like that's really when I started like playing guitar and stuff, and trying to sing. My very like super low register. Yeah, took a while to bring my range up.
And so were some of those songs on Against Our Own Retreat?
No. I think we trashed all those songs. We had, yeah, I want to say we had like 5 songs that never saw daylight, so to speak.
And was that called The Subtle Way?
It's a good question. I think, I mean, Jason's the one that came up with the name Subtle Way. And I think we didn't really have a name until we had this. I don't know if you ever met Damien. Damien was a bass player we had for a little while. My timeline's a little fuzzy. I think he was before Melody, but I could be wrong about that. And I think that's when we were like The Subtle Way, when we had Damien playing bass, and then I don't think we had a real drummer for a while. But yeah, then eventually we met Tony at high school, and my girlfriend at the time, Melody, was a bass player. So we had everything we needed for a 4-piece. Then eventually Marcelo joined. Marcelo, we always like loved. Well, Marcelo's like our best friend, so I mean he still is. So we just loved being around him, and he was like one of the best guitar players I've ever seen in person.
Yeah.
Still to this day, probably.
Yeah, he's like Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah. It's just his fingers can't not play the right key as he's like speeding through the fretboard. So yeah, it was like natural for him to join the band. I think there was a little bit of drama because he was for a while in 2 bands, and the other band wasn't like super stoked that he was splitting his time. But yeah, eventually, I think, yeah, after he joined, I think, yeah, we kind of like, I think we were like thinking that Melody is not very serious about being in a band, so we probably should find like someone who's more serious. But we ended up switching. I remember Tony, he just wanted to jump around and smash things on stage, so he was like, I want to play bass. So we let him be the bass player, and then we found I guess we had Mike. I forget if Mike was in Marcelo's. I think Mike might have been in Marcelo's other band for a little while. So I guess we kind of like siphoned 2 members from that band. And then that was the first time we toured was with that group.
So did you go right into, it sounds like you sort of accelerated pretty quickly once you formed, like I mean, what you sent me, Against Our Own Retreat, is a full length, and it's great. And you were still in high school. So did you just start playing shows and deciding, oh, we're going to record a full length, and the artwork looks really nice? Like it could have been released on any label out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. I kind of forget like how quickly we wrote all those songs. But if I remember, yeah, I think the last song we wrote was Knights of Columbus, which is the last song on that record. And I think we were hoping for like a really epic outro. So that's kind of where we landed with that. Made it possible for lots of front flips off the stage also, which is a benefit.
Yeah. So that's one thing that people who didn't get a chance to see The Subtle Way don't know, is that you guys you specifically were known for taking front flips off the stage. However, it wasn't a situation where the crowd is all pushed up to the front and you do a front flip and you're crowd surfing and singing as one would normally think, you would basically, basically tell everyone to
Clear the
move
area.
to the sides, like open up the pit basically. So there's a big empty pit, and you just do a flip off of the stage and land in the middle of the pit and just start like, continuing the song and like going crazy on the floor.
Yeah, that was real fun. It got confusing at times because people thought I was like, trying to start a pit. I'm like, no, like it's just I don't want to like I've all like there were a few times where I landed like right on someone because there was a confusion. I felt real bad, but my goal was never to like injure someone.
Did you ever have a situation where you landed and then they thought it was going to be a pit, and so everyone just like crunched you?
Oh yeah, plenty of times. I mean, oftentimes, yeah, it would be like as I'm in midair, it becomes a pit, and then by the time I land, it's it's going full blast.
That's awesome. Did people a lot of the times talk to you about that specific thing being exceptionally memorable to them?
Yeah, they did, but for some reason, everyone thought it was a backflip. I think the reason is because I would kind of like do a little 180 upside down, so it looked like that would land with my back, like, or that land looking at the stage a lot of the time. So people would call it a backflip, and I'd be like, yeah, yeah, sure, it's a backflip.
So people
But
came up to you after the shows and they were like, "Oh, that was so cool."
yeah, people like that. I
Yeah.
liked it too. It made me feel like a Jedi. Like there was one time we played this wrestling rink in Bakersfield, California, and it was like on the wrestling rink. They just took off the I don't know what they're called, the things that keep the wrestlers on the rink,
The ropes?
the ropes. Yeah. I thought there might be a more technical name for them, but ropes make sense.
Yeah.
But it was like I think it was like just about 6 feet high. So I was like, I didn't think about it because I knew that if I thought about it, I'd be scared. But I just went for it, and I remember thinking like, wow, I'm in the air for a long time. Like it was like a slow motion front flip. But that was really fun. All the front flips were usually pretty fun, I would say.
So when you guys signed, we'll just skip ahead a little bit. So when you guys ended up signing to Negative Progression for the EP Until We Have Faces, do you remember anything about choosing which studio you were going to go into and writing those songs, and if you, because you were on a label, if you wanted to write them differently, or because you thought more people would hear them, you took more care to write them um, in a more thoughtful manner?
Yeah. I think, well, even with Against Our Own Retreat, I think there was always this like someone, usually it was Marcelo, who had a very high bar for what would be accepted into the Subtle Way discography. So I think it was like I felt like there was always a good level of quality assurance in the band. So I don't know if it increased. Maybe it could have increased a little bit with Until We Have Faces. But I think we knew we wanted to go because we really liked Castle Ultimate Studios, which is where we recorded the Against the Run Retreat.
And where was that?
I was in Berkeley, no, Emeryville, Oakland area. So I think we knew we wanted to go there again. I think the first time we recorded, there were two engineers there. First one was the first Against Our Retreat engineer was Aaron. Blanking on their last names, unfortunately. They're probably still recording now. And then we knew that this other guy, Zach, he did more like heavy, like more metal bands at Castle Ultimate. So we opted for him for the second our EP, which was our second record.
Do you feel like the different engineers got different things out of you in the recording process?
It's a good question. It's been so long. I don't know if I remember too much. I think Aaron was helpful to like show me how to like reach a little bit slightly higher notes. Like I'd say Skies is probably one of our more popular songs, And Aaron was he recorded it in Against the Retreat and helped me hit that high note in the chorus. And I kind of changed how I sang those notes a little later on. Like I think it was almost like yodeling. I'm not that I know how to yodel, but like I would like try to reach the note, my voice would crack, and so usually, to most people they'd be like, oh, the voice cracked, like it's crap now. But I would like try and manipulate the crack of my voice to hit the note. So that's kind of how I ended up getting even further in my range, and eventually it sounded less like a crack and more on purpose. Thankfully,
Less like a crack and more like a cracking.
Right, totally.
So as far as writing lyrics, do you have a background in writing, or are you an avid reader, or where did that come from?
I wouldn't say I don't read as much as I would like to read, especially not. Well, I guess back then I was reading. I was reading a lot of like we were never like a Christian band or anything like that. But a lot of the bands I liked were Christian bands, or they were like, I don't know, maybe like, just positive bands. So I tried to like keep things positive. I don't know if I would, definitely not religious now, but I think even today, like I still write music, and I'm trying to I feel like if you're going to write a song, I thought this back then, if you're going to write a song, it's probably like more beneficial to everyone if it's like not a song that's been written before. So,
and that's hard to do.
Yeah. But it's hard to do for sure. But sometimes, like, I know like Dustin from Thrice, he would a lot of times write songs based off of books, which I thought was an interesting idea. And that's kind of like the pattern I followed for like Until We Have Faces, because that was a C.S. Lewis book. I kind of try to just keep in that pattern of positivity.
Cool.
But yeah, definitely not as much of a reader as I wish I was. I'm sure that would have helped a lot.
Were there, like, how did you write lyrics? Did you just sit down and say, I have to write a song? Or did you just keep a notepad with you, and while you were, skating at the mall, you just thought of a cool, like, verse?
Yeah, usually it'd be like, I think of a melody. And sometimes lyrics come with that melody, because I think one thing I noticed, at least in some genres of music, like a lot of pop, songs they'll be catchy if you're kind of singing them the same way that you would speak them, with like accents on the right syllables, and the right inflection. So like a lot of times I'll like like we all do, we just kind of get lost in thought, and then think of some line that can kind of fit into a lot of different contexts, and then from there I would, if it's like a short and sweet, then you can kind of like apply a melody to that, maybe similar to how you would say it normally, and then from like that's kind of like the seed of a lot of the songs that we had. But then on the other hand, there were times where I was like, I have to write a song because I've been begging Jason, Marcelo, and everyone else to finish the music to this song, but we have to record in 2 weeks. So I'm gonna be like, in trouble. Like, so for Coldest of Notions, I think that was on Until We Have Faces. I think it was the last song on that record. I think I only had like 2 days to write that song, which for me is short.
Right.
And to drag things out a little bit. And I had just watched the movie Blood Diamond, so that was heavily influenced.
You're like sitting around in your room. You're like, okay, what's on the wall? I have a poster of The Empire Strikes Back, so I'm going to write a song about an evil empire. Okay.
Yeah, effectively.
You're like, what to do?
I mean, it was more, I remember for that song specifically, I was kind of freaking out. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I have to put something out in the vocal booth in 2 days.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this about a couple specific songs. So Melee is the first song on Until We Have Faces. And I would say that's probably one of your most popular songs. I think that was one of the ones that I, as a label, pushed. I think it's one of the best songs on, on the EP. And that specific song, and then of course Skies, which you talked about, which was on the full length that you self-released, you re-recorded and put it on the EP. Those two particular songs I think were very popular with your fans. Do you think there's anything specifically about those songs that set them apart from some of the others?
Well, for Skies, I think that was there's something about, I think there's something about like the I wouldn't say not simplicity, but the structure, the song structure of Skies is very generic. It's like intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, which surprisingly we didn't have that. It wasn't super common for the Subtle Way to follow that pattern. It was kind of common, I guess, but I think the guitar work in that song, it's like it sneaks up on you. It's like, holy crap, wait a minute, they just played like 30 notes and it's been like 2 seconds sort of thing. I'm not sure. It's like a simple vocal melody, it like repeats it during the chorus.
Right.
Sure, that adds to the catchiness. I think the verse guitar is like, it's not like, I mean, they're technically chords, but they're not like common chords that you or like, at least that I'm used to hearing in songs like for a long period of time. Yeah, it's like, it's a very riff heavy song. It's like riffy and catchy. It's like everything I really like about it.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I've had a number of conversations with various bands over the years, and even bands that are on the label now, where we have these discussions about catchiness, and of course, I mean, knowing the records I've put out over the years, that catchiness is really important to me. Because when I'm at a show, when I've been at a show, whether it's an emo show or a pop punk show or a hardcore show or whatever, I want to be singing along, right? Like I can't make out every lyric, but if there's a chorus that I can make out, and if that chorus repeats, I can at least participate by singing along like 2 lines on 3 different occasions or whatever it is. And I think that that's easier to do in pop punk and to a certain extent emo, but like with screamo, which I would, the reason why I personally wouldn't call the Subtle Way post-hardcore, because like to me post-hardcore is like Quicksand and like heavy Helmet and sort of like heavy and dense, and so I screamo to me is a little bit different. But so for a screamo band, you have to not only mix, you can have catchiness being the sing-songy part, but you can also have catchiness and repetition in the heavy vocal part, or catchiness and repetition in the guitar riff.
Totally, yeah, for sure.
So,
I think it's
important. What do you think about that?
No, yeah, I think I agree. One thing I kind of thought of as you were saying that is, and we would think about, I think, in the Subtle Way when we were writing songs, is like you can definitely be catchy, but there's also something to be said about lasting value of a song. That I don't know if it's like contradictory to catchiness, but it's like my favorite band is Thrice, and they have a lot of catchy songs, but there's also a lot of parts in their songs where you have to dig a little bit for, like maybe a couple listens through, you're like kind of noticing something, a different kind of flow in the song, and that for me that kind of like makes the songs listenable 20 years after they've been put out. And I do remember thinking in the Subtle Way days, like, we could write this like 3-note chorus, which I mean, usually like one thing we learned is like the fewer notes, the more catchy a song is going to be. But so there was that, but then there's also I did want to have lasting value, which is like I feel like there's less of a formula to get at that.
Do you think
But
that separates bands that are just like kind of fun local band versus like a timeless band that kind of becomes
yeah,
national and bigger?
yeah, it's a good question. I'm trying to, because on one hand there's Thrice, which I think makes that point, but then there are bands like Under Oath, which are they have very catchy hooks and they're very simple like melodies a lot of time, not all the time, but they still also have strong lasting value. Like I could easily happily sing along to like any Under Oath song from 20 years ago, like right now. So that's a good point. I was about to say yeah, I think it does, but I feel like there's something else. There's some
Well, it's just very interesting because the scene that you guys were in, and we'll talk about your touring later because you did a lot of it. You were in that. I feel like you guys fortunate. What made you different was that you were anchored in that scene before it became cheesy. And I'm sorry to insult anyone, but like, in California at that time, you guys were starting to play and you were influenced by, Finch, Seosin, Thrice, when those bands were coming up, and Poison the Well was not from California, they were from Florida, but they toured a lot and were very big at that time. And that was when even like, I don't know if you followed them, but like, Haven had been very big and they were friends with Thrice, and they had the first couple records were very metal and arguably the forebearers of screamo, the early first two records. And I feel like that is what gave The Subtle Way a special foundation. And like if I'm not incorrect, like that band of Skylight Drive, who became very large, you you helped them play some of their first shows. Like you were a band before them, is that right?
I'm not sure if we were. I don't know about the timeline, but we definitely played. Like we booked a show with them in at the Fremont Teen Center. I remember. I think that was their first time in Fremont, which is where Subtle Way is technically from. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like
I guess I just mean like I just remember that was like right at the time, like after that time period was when you get all of those kind of cookie cutter
oh
bands that had shirts that were glow in the dark or whatever color neon, and every band was doing the same movements on stage that were seemingly choreographed, and you guys were just more raw to me, which is why I wanted to work with you. And I think that has something to do with like the specific place that you guys started and the time period which you started. I think you started before all the cheesiness.
yeah. I mean, we definitely saw that happening as we were were touring and stuff. But yeah, I think that's kind of like that raw energy is kind of the reason why, at least for me, why I was like happy that we were like a screamo band, because it's not like we were adding screaming because it was cool or because like it fit here. It was like, I mean, I mean, maybe like as time went on, it kind of became like such a natural thing to go to. But uh, like initially, I was writing scream parts just like as like this is the part that makes sense to scream because it's like how I want to express this, like the emotion. It's not like a tool. It's just like another voice to express what I'm trying to express.
That's interesting that you describe it as like another voice. That's very interesting. I never really thought about it like that. I mean, it's almost, I mean, I've heard of the vocal in a song described as another instrument, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about like the different kinds of vocals as different kinds of instruments
Oh,
expressing a different feeling or mood or whatever.
yeah. That's true. Yeah, definitely. I've also heard the instrument analogy, or I don't know if it's called, if that would be an analogy, but
So as far as the lyrics go, on Until We Have Faces, do you remember? I mean, is there anything specific about any of the lyrics on that record that you want to discuss that were especially meaningful or poignant to you, or maybe misunderstood?
it's like, I mean, I don't know how people understood my lyrics, but yeah, I can talk about like
I mean, I didn't know if maybe people came up to you after the show or
oh,
was like, I mean, so for example, some of your lyrics, I would imagine some people may have asked you, is this a Christian song or is this religious or something like that?
I think we were asked that, but I would always say no.
Right, right.
But yeah, one song that comes to mind without diving into my like personal trauma and issues is yeah, Melee was I think that was about well, it was, yeah, the concept I was trying to bring forward is like, I guess, about perspective, because the lyrics are like, when my part, when where my parts ache, like when you can like feel what I'm feeling, then you can like tell me how to live my life, so to speak. But until then, which is not possible, like, we all get to live our own lives the way that we want to live them, uh, and we shouldn't be ashamed of that. That was the general idea, and I think that was the story behind that is I was taking my laundry from the lawn downstairs up to my room, and I dropped a sock, and my dad was like, "You dropped a sock." I was like, "I know. I'm going to come back when I dump this stuff because my hands are full." He's like, "No, you're not going to come back." Like, what? How do you know what I'm going to do? That was my plan. Like, I looked back, I saw the sock. I'm going to come back. I'm not going to leave my sock on the stair.
That is so funny. That is so funny because, like, obviously that can be interpreted. You have to walk a mile in someone's shoes to understand their perspective. It's like such a big concept. It applies to so many literary traditions, and you're just like, I dropped a sock doing the laundry. My dad was like, pick up that sock, and you're like, no, fuck you, Dad. It's
Yeah.
just so hilarious.
I mean, it's a
Hey,
little, yeah. It's that's like the mildest version to like describe my relationship with my dad, but like it's like the same vein of just like people expecting other people to like have the same perspective that they do, and or assuming that they know what other people think. But yeah, no, you're right. Like, there's a lot. Yeah, I'm sure like nothing's coming to mind now, but I'm positive that other songs were seeded from similar like silly interactions I've had.
well, I mean, it's funny because even bands that are huge that inspire us, a lot of those bands when they wrote their songs, they're 20, 19, 24, 17. You know,
Yeah.
you don't know, and so it's kind of like every single interaction, might be something just kind of every day, and that causes someone to have their mind kind of explore, and then they write this song that has so many different applications, and they're just like, people all over the world are listening to it, and just taking what they can from it, and
Yeah,
that's,
totally.
that's
I was listening to some podcast actually from shoot, I can't remember his name, Malcolm Gladwell, and
yeah.
he's talking about comparing rock to country music, and which of the two genres is more catchy. And his conclusion was that country is more catchy because it's very specific. Like, I was drinking a beer on a Tuesday night at this location doing this thing, versus like rock, or lyrics are very like vague and like more poetic, so to speak, you could say. More metaphor, like a lot more metaphors in them, so it's harder for people to connect with that, I guess, at
Right.
least quickly. So that's yeah, maybe it's like
Well, it's like, yeah, it's like in country music, there's there's just sort of like a narrative they're painting a picture for someone that they can kind of empathize and put themselves in that position, right? They're like, yeah, I know what that's like. Whereas some rock songs are just like artistic, artsy fartsy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I mean. I love songs. This is my own cheesy thing, but bands like the Get Up Kids and Saves the Day, and they have all these songs where they talk about a town, right? They mention a town, in the song they're like blah 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 Boston, or blah 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 Philly, or San Francisco, or Alkaline Trio, or whatever. And there's just something about those songs, because you're just like, oh, I've been to that town.
Yeah.
I know what this song is all about.
Right.
So
Totally.
yeah, I love that stuff. Okay, so the next thing that you put out, Man the Watchtower, that my memory of that was that you guys basically were touring a lot and building your fan base, and we'll talk about that after we talk about the records themselves. But you weren't ready to record a full length because you didn't have all the songs, or we didn't have time, or all of the things that needed to happen to put out a full length. And so the idea was, let's put out something on iTunes. And I think we did discussed maybe putting it out on vinyl as a 7-inch, even though I had not released vinyl in like years and years since like my first releases. I think I was considering that, but we just, because we did the iTunes thing back then, and what was it, 2008? You did 2 new songs and a Thrice cover.
Right. Yes, I remember that.
So what was that record? What do you remember about that, recording that, deciding to do that, deciding what cover to do? Was there any discussion within the band, like, I don't want to do that, or yeah, everyone was all on board?
Yeah, there was there were a lot of mixed perspectives for that episode of The Subtle Way. I remember. I can't remember who had what perspective, but I remember one was like, we shouldn't, like, there was that one perspective of like, we shouldn't be doing this at all, like, we're not like, we weren't sure, we weren't super confident in the songs, and we weren't sure which cover to do, and if we even should do a cover of like a band that's kind of like, relatively similar to us. But then there are other perspectives of like, yeah, we should definitely like put out music because it's been a while and we don't want to make it seem like we're not doing anything. And there were perspectives in the middle. But I remember the recording process, and I do remember I was a little bummed out during the recording process because I think the person that was recording us, I forget his name, but he had like an assistant who he was like.
Was that in a different studio?
Yeah, that was in like someone's studio in Santa Cruz. And it was like a 2 or 3 day thing.
I think I came down for that, maybe.
Yeah, you were down for at least a little bit of that for sure. And yeah, I remember we were like asking whoever it was, they had some trainee or something that was working with them. We were asking them if we could tweak the track one, something a certain way, and they were like, just let him do his job. And we're like, but this is our, like, we have to put our names on this so also. So I feel like the recording experience for that record, or that whatever it was, single release, was probably like the least fun and collaborative for most of us. And I think we kind of walked away a little less than stoked on at least the quality of the recordings. I think by the time we were recording, we were actually pretty happy with the actual songs. But yeah, I feel like we all like after the fact kind of thought we could have maybe done that better somehow, in a different way, or maybe a different studio or something like that.
I always liked the name. I always liked the name of the first song. It was so weird. My open parentheses look like C's.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's like such a classic title of a song of that era.
Yeah. Right, that, and then
I
there
mean,
was
that
like,
could have been like a brand new song or something. Like not the title, or Taking Back Sunday, or I mean different
oh,
genres, obviously,
gotcha.
but.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And the next one we had on the next record was "This Ain't No Fashion Show."
Yeah, that was good. That was appropriate for the song, how it sounded, I thought. That was a badass song. So when you put out the Man the Watchtower, um when you wrote those lyrics and decided, how did you decide on doing a Thrice cover? Was everyone just sort of all on board, or did you guys talk about doing other covers, or what?
Yeah, that's a good question. My memory is failing me for what other things. 'Cause I do remember to discussing which Thrice song to do, but I don't remember if we discussed other bands to do. I'm sure we must have. Unless do you remember if you suggested Thrice a Thrice
I
cover?
probably suggested Thrice
You may
because I knew that you guys were influenced by them and they were doing very well. And
yeah, I remember talking to you about like, are they going to be okay with us covering their song? And you were like, doesn't matter. Like they have
well,
to.
I paid the
Yeah, because you
licensing
paid. Yeah,
fee.
yeah, exactly.
So
Right. That's
you
where we
can
learned
do
about
that.
ASCAP.
Yeah, realistically, look, my job is to promote the band and try to get as many people to hear the band as possible. And I thought that and I think that you're a great band. So, it's also entirely possible that I was like, if they cover Thrice and people are searching iTunes for
Right.
that song, then the Thrice version will come up, and then the Subtle Wake version will also come up, and people will be like, "Oh, let's listen to, let's buy for 99 cents this band, The Subtle Way, doing this song I like." And also on iTunes, you could like listen to a brief sample
Yeah.
or whatever, 10 seconds or 15 seconds, and check it out. And so what better way to get people that like that kind of music to learn about The Subtle Way than to do it that way. Plus, also, there's always the chance that maybe Thrice will find out about it and take you on tour.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, this conversation feels familiar. Like even though it was like 15, 20 years ago, whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that logic, that line of thinking is what we got on board with too. And so I feel like, yeah, I don't remember discussing any other bands to cover,
Yeah.
but I
No,
remember
it's a really good cover. I think you did it very well.
no, thanks. I think I wanted to do Deadbolt because that's like, their Thrice is like most popular song. But I think I got pushback on that just because like it is the most popular song. So opted for something a little bit less exactly Thrice, or I
Right.
mean exactly their most popular. But yeah, I couldn't.
So then the full length was called "Thus Far the Channels Speak."
Yeah,
Um,
right here. This one.
what? So okay, so let's dig into this a little bit.
Okay.
Where did you record this record?
Oh, yeah, this one. Yeah, this is we record with Casey Bates in, I forget what his studio is called, in
It was in
Seattle.
Oregon, right?
I thought it was in Washington.
Oh, Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw my aunt and uncle live up there. We spent some time with them.
And so I know that we had discussions about like trying to get a producer, and I'm sure we talked about Bo from Seosin or someone like that. And we chatted about different producers trying to, you know, help boost you to get to the next level. Do you remember anything about why you recorded with Casey?
Yeah, I think we were looking at like the his portfolio, and he had recorded like Scally Drive, Dance Gavin Dance, Pierce to the Veil, I think, and then there was some. Do you know what that band was? Where like all of those bands, a bunch of those bands, like came together as one band. It was like, I forget the name of it. There was
I
like
don't I don't remember that. No.
yeah, there was some band where like Johnny, Craig, and the singer from Dance Gavin Dance, and the singer from Pierce the Veil, and Chiodos. They were all like guests doing vocals on this one band, but I can't remember the name.
Wait, was it
But anyway,
Drugs? No, that
no,
was,
no.
that was
Drugs
later.
is like new, right? Drugs is like
Well, it started a long time ago, but it just
okay.
resurfaced.
Oh, I
And
see.
it's like bigger than ever. I think he also did Fear before the March of Flames, maybe.
Oh, yeah, he might have. But yeah, he had a great portfolio. So we were like, yes, let's do this.
Yeah, yeah. So the reason why I started it out like that was because I think that the traditional Subtle Way fans who started out with Against Our Own Retreat and went to Until We Have Faces, there's musical similarity and development there. And I think that after the full length came out, the second full length came out thus far, The Channels Speak, there was, I guess, commentary. I don't want to say critiques, or there were certain. I heard feedback that record didn't sound similar enough to the prior stuff. It sounded a little different. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
I probably should have listened to them before this more recently, but I feel like I can. I feel like if I try, I can see that perspective.
I think maybe the criticism that I remember hearing was that there was, I guess, more synth, or it was there. The synth was more prominent, and I think that and like there were no like dance songs or anything like that, but there were a couple little parts that were more fun.
Yeah, right. There were definitely there could have been some. I could see someone saying that there are dance parts to a song potentially, but I can agree it was definitely a lot more electronic driven in some songs, especially some intros. I do remember one one criticism of like they're using autotune in like too much, but I like there's only two songs where we use autotune, and we use them for like less than, I don't know, 10 seconds or something. Or something.
Right.
Yeah, I remember seeing that feedback and then like feeling defensive and then looking and then like making myself feel better because I was like, okay, they're wrong. Because it's not
Right.
as but,
Right.
not that they're wrong, but
I think also part of it was that I think that maybe the early couple releases feel a bit more anchored in hardcore and metal, and or like just like aggressive. I don't even want to say metal, but like hardcore and loud music.
Mhm.
Versus, I think the second full length seems more kind of like moving the band towards the whole like Rise Records screamo universe. Not that it was sounding like that, but it sounded more like that than the past releases.
Yeah, I think looking at the track list on the back of the CD right here, I think I agree with what you're saying, and also, but we were kind of like leaning a little bit more into like the heavy electronic, like you and like more also like more Rise Recordsy dimension. But then we had songs like let's see, You and What Army. That was like there was like a southern rock part in there. There's also like southern-ish parts in
like Every Time I Die vibe.
Yeah. So we were also kind of trying that stuff out. I mean we had technically this record was the first record that Jason was not in the band. He wrote Bolder Than Boulders with us, then he left after that, and then we had Jeff, who's also a great guitarist.
Yeah.
And he's a little bit more inclined to write like the southern, like Every Time I Die kind of stuff, which is cool. He had some pretty awesome riffs in a lot of these songs.
And I'll pause. I'll just play a little bit of one of the songs. This is one of the heavier ones. This Ain't No Fashion Show.
No
So yeah, that's super heavy. Like the heaviest thing I've ever put out.
Yeah, I'm actually I wasn't able to hear what you played, but I
Oh,
was
okay. Well, I'll put it on after.
yeah. Yeah, that was probably one of our heavier songs. There's that song, and then The Guard from the previous record were probably like our heavier. Oh, and then from the first record we had what is it? The Perfect Lens.
Yeah.
But we always had, like one like pretty hard song at least in each record.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
I
then
do, that was the thing. I think the addition of the kind of like Southern rock and roll, Maylene and the Sons of Disaster kind of vibe, and in addition to a couple songs having like, a few, 10 to 20 seconds of noticeable auto tune, and then like some stuff that was like a couple little parts where there was kind of like danceable
yeah.
portions. I just think that there were maybe so many like little parts in different songs that fans of the band were not used to. I think maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. But I mean, I feel like, and it might have been, seen as a negative attribute of the subtle way, but we always had like pretty wide variety of parts in our records, like from like the super slow, like clean love notes in the infrared, like very low singing to like high riffy riffy parts and high pitched singing like Skies, and then Perfect Lens all in one record. Like having so many different colors in like one painting, so to speak, is it can be jarring for some people. I kind of
Right.
I would imagine make it so like there's less of a like less retention, like people kind of drop off at a certain point. Maybe they never make it to the part that they like.
Right.
um
But I mean,
so
to be clear, obviously, like you gain fans over the course of time. It's not that like after you put out the full length, way more people knew about the band.
yeah, I mean it's I mean I don't regret doing that. It was just I loved being able to be in a band that we were able to happy to write whatever we thought we were feeling at the time.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
when you wrote the lyrics for Thus Far the Channel Speak, are there any songs in particular that you remember, the stories of how you came to the lyrics, or any specific verses that really meant a lot to you?
um yeah, I think there were I know for This Ain't No Fashion Show, I was that was a little bit of me like I'm not sure what the best way to say it is, like some of the well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if I want to talk about that song actually.
Okay, let's talk about a different
But
song.
yeah, let's see. Um yeah,
Did you write this? Did you write all the lyrics like beforehand, or were you still doing the thing where you were going up to the studio and you're like, "Shit, I gotta finish this"?
yeah, no, I was definitely writing because we spent a week, I think, at Casey Bates's house, and I was definitely writing lyrics at that in the studio. So um yeah, I'm trying to remember. I haven't listened to these songs, I guess, in a while. I probably should have done that. But I mean, Thus Far the Channel Speak, I think the title of the record came from like, we've been doing this for a little while now. So far things have been going okay. Yeah, thus far things have been going okay. Like we're able to like maybe not do it professionally like as our own main source of income right now, but this is what we're trying to do right now. So like I think The Breath and The Breathing, which is like probably one of the songs that was considered having too much auto tune. I think that one was like it was like about the experience of what it's like on stage and being able to like being lucky enough to have people that want to see us play and let us do the things that we love to do. I'm sure that song has been written hundreds of times over, but I felt like it made sense for this record for us to do that.
Well, that's funny too that it's funny that you mentioned that, the whole thing about the auto tune, because I mean, to a certain extent, it's my fault, and I guess I'm sorry because well, so here's the thing: it's like with every record that I get, right? Like I get the record and I listen to the songs, and we talk about the order of the songs, and I choose which song or two that I want to promote, like the most, like to put on a sampler or to push, or these days I'm doing a lot of like 2-song vinyl singles. So one of the songs is the single, the other song is the B-side. So I know that the Breath and the Breathing was one of the songs that I chose to push from the record because I love that song. And it didn't even occur to me, like I liked the auto-tune part, like just as like some little extra something or another. And honestly, we may be making more of it than it is, because I think that maybe someone in a review mentioned it. And it could have been one person out of thousands of people that heard this record, but because it was in a review and like it bothered us, and then it made us kind of paranoid about it. And it's just like, I selected, I love all the songs on this record, and I selected, I think for full length, I usually pick three songs that I thought were the best songs that sort of had the variety of the band, and that was one of them. And so maybe that's my fault that I didn't think it was an issue, and I'm like, oh yeah, the Breath of the Breathing, this is a great fucking song, and whatever.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it was in a review. That is what I was reading. When I was talking about it earlier, I was thinking it was a comment on something, but I think it might have been a review in some published thing. Yeah. So that's probably what I got. Because I don't think I would normally get defensive just like reading comments on YouTube or whatever.
Well, the thing is, like, historically, anyone that knows that's ever been in a band or run a label or done a zine for any period of time, especially like back in the day and before you guys, when zines were printed on paper, like it was notorious that you would send in your shit to the magazine, Maximum Rock and Roll or Flipside or something else, and you're like, okay, you send a bio with it so they know this is a pop punk band, or this is a hardcore band, or this is a ska band, or whatever the fuck it is. And the person deciding who gets to review which thing, they never were like, oh, this is a pop punk band, let's give it to the guy that likes pop punk. This is a hardcore band, they would always give like the pop punk record, at least of mine, but I think it's pretty common, to like someone that liked like Mohawk gutter punk crust, or whatever it was. And they're just like, oh, this is crap, this Green Day, Blink-182 wannabe garbage. Or for you guys, it wasn't given to the one person that liked all that stuff. It was given to, someone that probably, liked Braid or something, like just totally different music.
Yeah. Yeah, the concept of reviews is interesting in and of itself, because there are as many perspectives as there are people. So,
well, it's just so interesting because, obviously in the before times, the only way you could hear what a song sounded like was either a review, someone else describing what it sounded like, or if it was like Tower Records and you can listen to one of those listening station things,
headphones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are great.
But that was also the thing that was really cool about those days when you could listen to like samples on iTunes, the 30-second or 20-second or pure volume or whatever it was.
Yes.
So I don't know. So let's talk a little bit about. Okay, let's talk really quickly a little bit more about the recording process of Thus Far the Channels Speak. Any good stories that come to mind?
I remember after I had finished the clean vocals, because we did clean vocals first. We were done for the day, and I think somehow someone had got a hold of some kind of weed. So we were like smoking weed in Casey's house, and he like came in and looked at us all, and he knew I was doing screaming vocals. He was like, yes, smoke that weed. It'll make your vocals like, way more like, like a lot more fry in your vocals. I remember like looking at him with the bong in my hand and thinking like, uh-oh, I'm gonna be in trouble. And then he was like encouraging us to smoke weed. I thought that was pretty funny.
He's like thinking about that as like how a producer thinks about what sort of effect they put on the vocal.
Right.
It's like you're putting an effect on your own vocal in real world.
Exactly. Let's turn the weed up on these vocals.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah, that was a good one. I think we actually we have a YouTube video that's still on YouTube about it. It's our like it's our journey there and back there recording. I don't know if it has us coming back, but we like I think the van like almost like exploded on the way over there or something like that. Like there's like a scene in that YouTube video where like I think I yell like everybody out of the van because like I was in the front and it was like a lot of smoke in the front and I didn't know what was gonna happen. So we like jumped out on the freeway. Then when we got there, we were like, yeah, we rode bikes. He had some bunch of bikes, so we rode bikes around his neighborhood. That was pretty awesome because it's like, Seattle area.
Did he produce the songs at all? Like, did he recommend kind of different changes to the songs, whether it was the structure or different vocal patterns or anything?
I remember really like hoping that was going to be the case. But when we first got there, he like sat us all down and he kind of told us how things were going to go. And one of the things he said was like, I'm not like a producer that writes parts, but he'll suggest tweaks or not suggest. He would say we have to do tweaks to certain parts. So he would like do very like, at least for our record, very like minute tweaks for like how this melody would go vocally or something like that. So he definitely produced it. But
I mean, were you disappointed in the fact that he didn't really like dig in and mold the songs?
Yeah, I think I was hoping for a little bit more molding than what took place because I think we spent some time recording pre-production tracks for him, and then I was expecting him to have a bunch of notes coming out of that. I think he definitely listened to the pre-production tracks, but I don't think he like. I mean, I don't want to like, shit on Casey Bates. I think he was great, but
yeah, of course.
I don't remember him like being prepared with like a set of notes that he wanted to apply.
Well, I think it's informative for people in bands now, especially because and me too, because there is a big difference between someone who a producer and a band who have expectations that are aligned. So I think it's really important for bands to communicate what they want and expect, because I've heard just so many stories like yours, and to a certain extent, it's also it's not fair to the person producing the record if they're not everyone. Some people might just be an amazing engineer, right? And other people are great musicians and they can play every instrument, and they're telling you how to completely restructure the whole song, and that might not be in everyone's wheelhouse. And I think that it is important to, and I can't remember the conversations I had with Casey about that beforehand, but probably, I don't know if maybe I wasn't clear enough or flushed that out enough, or I mean, someone like Bo from Seosin obviously is known for molding songs. Someone like Chad from Newfound Glory, he molds songs. He's a musician, and a lot of people that's just not what they do.
Right. Yeah, I think it was still a net positive. You know,
Oh
this
yeah.
was great for Casey because he does have the experience. I think giving him those pre-production tracks, they helped at least express the vision that we had at a high level to Casey. Like, this is what we're going for. So he was able to like help us, you know, hit that a little bit more clear on the mark rather than if we were to go without Casey. So he definitely definitely improved the record.
Do you feel like recording with him? And again, I love Casey Bates. Not shitting on him. He's amazing, and I'm very, very happy that he did this record for us.
Yeah.
And I hope he's well. And so, do you feel like the band got any extra octane from having his name, you know, on the record? Like when you were on the road, when playing with other bands, were they like, "Oh shit, you recorded with Casey Bates? Cool."
That's a good question. I don't remember that. I would imagine that we told people. Like I don't know if I don't know if people noticed that credit on the record and brought it up on their own.
Yeah, but that's okay. I was just curious. Not, you know, not everyone remembers, you know, like the same stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I think there was, you know, Casey Bates was a great name to have as part of our team, and then Chris Rubey from Devil Wears Prada doing the artwork for Until We Have Faces. That was also something we would, you know, sneak into conversations.
Yeah. So did that ever? How was that received?
It was, yeah. People would be stoked, like, oh, cool, like, because yeah, Chris Rubey, he did a lot of really cool artwork, and then like he had done that artwork for us, and then I think we sent him all of our music at the time, which was both Against Our Own Retreat and Until We Have Faces. And then I remember I got a text from him or something like a couple weeks later. He was like, "Dude, I just wrote. We're writing right now, and I just wrote this guitar part or this breakdown, but I had to rescind it because I realized it's the perfect length." So that was cool. Because the worst problem accidentally biting off a subtle way.
I wish they accidentally took you on tour.
Right. Yeah, we played. We had to play with them at the Boardwalk, I think, in Sacramento.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and that was after we had put or Chris had done our artwork. So I was trying to like.
Did you guys chat with him and stuff? Was he nice?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're all really cool. I remember we were so bummed out because we only got to play like 4 songs because we were like opening, of course, and Mike's double bass pedal broke, and we were like frantically trying to get another double bass pedal, but we couldn't quite. And the sound guy was like, "It's over." So we only had to play. I didn't get to do my front flip, you know.
God damn. That's such a bummer.
But Devil Wears Prada, they were really cool. They were. They said that, you know, we sounded really good and very good show and all that. So that was.
They're like, you sound really good, but you can't get some of the basic shit together. So we're not going to take you on tour. Yeah. That can't happen on one of our tours.
Right. Yeah.
So anyways, transitioning to touring life, you guys toured a lot. So you toured basically over the course of what, like 3 years or more?
Well, our first tour was when we were 16. And I think that was.
Well, let's say a real tour, like, you know, like a real tour.
Like real as in, what does real mean? Like more than 2 weeks?
Like, but no, I mean, not to diminish what you did, but, you know, I think, let's say, beyond California.
Oh yeah, then 16.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the shortest tour thing that we ever considered a tour was a week.
That's probably why I signed you, actually. I was like, these guys are in high school. Their music is awesome. And they've gone on a tour, you know, pretty awesome.
Well, I don't know if I thought we only started touring after we started talking to you.
I don't know.
We may not have signed yet, but I remember thinking, yeah, because I'm pretty sure I was thinking Seth said that we can tour without being on a record label, and then I started to like book tours, which, oh my god, that I was so glad that you eventually became our booking agent, because holy shit, I was just like, in booking tour sucks. Like, as you probably know, especially as like a no name. Like, I was in high school, 16 years old. I knew that we wanted to book a summer tour, so I wanted to book a 30-day tour, and I spent like 6 months doing it. So I would come home, I would wake up for school, not open my curtains just so I'm rushing in to leave, and I come home from school and immediately get on my computer, not even open the curtains. So I'm just sitting there in the dark for like 3 to 6 hours every evening after school. And I got depressed. Like, I was just like bummed out all the time and in a bad mood. It's just like, that's all I was doing. And then, but it worked out in the end. We were able to get on, we booked up our own handful of tours. Touring itself, that was always a blast, but also the opposite, as everyone that's toured knows. Sure. I think the first tour we did, we were going to tour in my mom's minivan with our trailer, and then the minivan broke down immediately. Like, the first day driving to LA from the Bay Area, and then it was like totaled. The car is like done. And
I'm sure Mom didn't like that.
She did not. And then we ended up touring in Jason's parents' F-250, which is like a huge.
I remember that. We
couldn't sleep in the vehicle like we planned on. So we ended up getting a bunch of hotels. We stayed in some really crazy hotels that tour. We found like crack pipes underneath mattresses and stuff like that. We were like, we were scared a lot on that first tour, I remember. But
what were some of the like, I know you did a number of national tours.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first time we did a national tour, it was like a T-Sway Goes All the Way tour. And that's where we hit, I think, most states. I think, thing about me is my memory is not the best. Marcelo or Jason, like, they'll talk about like, oh, this is how St. Louis is laid out. I'm like, what? I don't remember. Did we go there? but like, they can like drive around any city that they've been in. I'm like, I don't remember. I guess I didn't do that much driving, at least not inside the city. I would do like the longer hauls, I guess. But
what were some of the bands you toured with, and what were some of your favorite places to play? Like, what are some really memorable shows?
We toured with a decent amount of bands. Well, actually, did we? I mean, we toured with like La Circa. We toured with Ice Nine Kills. They're probably one of the bigger bands that we've toured with. And Mozart Season. Who else did we tour with? I don't know. Do you remember anyone else that we kind of had like a?
Off the top of my head, I don't. I mean, you played shows with a bunch of bands.
Sure. Yeah.
That were
crazy. Some really big bands. But
why don't you mention who those bands were?
Probably the biggest show we played was at San Jose Event Center, Taste of Chaos, with Avenged Sevenfold, and then before them was One OK Rock, which is I heard they put a new song out. They're like a Japanese band. They put a new song out recently, and I was like, oh, I know this band, but it was actually like a pretty entertaining song. So I was surprised that they're still at it. We played with Day to Remember.
Where did you play with them?
That's a good question too. I want to say it was like in the Midwest somewhere.
I remember that was in Indiana.
That sounds believable.
That was in Indiana, because like I remember you guys used to get compared to A Day to Remember, because I hadn't heard of them, and they were fairly new, and it was just sort of weird for me because I'm originally from Orlando and they're from Orlando, and I had moved away before they were formed because they're younger than me. But my buddy Mike C does all of their artwork, so I just sort of was aware of them, and actually he did the artwork for Dennis is Dead. So he's really cool. And so that was cool that you played with A Day to Remember early on. I always kind of thought that you guys might get, recruited. Like, did any other bigger labels reach out to you, like Victory or Rise or anything like that?
No, we definitely. I mean, as far as I know, no one like tried to get to recruit us or anything like that. Yeah, I think. I feel like I, I know we were looking at those labels, but I don't remember if that was like when that was because I remember it might have been like when we were first looking for labels. We were looking at Rise, and then I think we are hoping like shooting high, aiming high, like Fearless was one of the labels we were looking at. I think, and I was telling you the other day, like we liked the Burning Water, and we saw they're on Negative Progression Records, and that's kind of how we ended up submitting ourselves to Negative Progression Records.
That's cool. That's awesome. Very cool. Um, so what were some of your most memorable shows? Like I remember, obviously, I went out on the road with you a number of times, and in fact, one time played in your band.
Just one time, I thought it was like a couple of shows, wasn't it?
I think it might maybe it was two. I just specifically remember New Hampshire because I used to put on shows there when I lived in Boston, and it was just like a cool experience for me. And I have some photos of that. But I do remember. Well, I remember the New Jersey show. You guys tried to play with no bass player because Chad had to go home.
Chad went on vacation during our tour. It was a family vacation. And he was like, we need to, yeah, I gotta go on I gotta go on the break from his currently full-time job, which is being on tour. And we all
It
gave him
was
a bunch of
honestly that was, I mean, I love Chad. I wasn't pissed per se, but like that was potentially a very big show because it was in New Jersey and it was a promoter that put on like all the big shows, and there was like good locals, and and you guys I thought were playing so well on the tour, and you just sounded so good, and it was one of those venues that had a large stage, like a tall stage, if I remember correctly. And I just I was watching you up there with no bass player. I'm just like, what the fuck are they doing?
right. Yeah, man, bass. Yeah, you got to have a bass player.
I mean, it was just disappointing that like, I mean, you sounded good. Like you sounded good, obviously. But I was just thinking about how all these kids in New Jersey, just like since I knew the Northeast very well, I knew that you guys could really, I mean, Census Fail was from that area. You know, you could really have taken off had that show been awesome. It's okay. You know, you played in the Northeast a lot of times and had some. I remember Providence, Rhode Island. That show was insane. I don't I don't remember what it was, but like just there was tons of kids there.
Yeah, I do. I remember walking around before that show, just taking in the area because it's a very foreign land for me, being all the way up there. Uh, but I do remember there being a lot of kids there, but I don't remember too many details. I remember we got to play with. We met up with. In Connecticut one day. Like the one, so according to the Connecticut folks that we met, the one good day of weather in whatever season it was, because we were like, wow, if I were to live anywhere else, I'd probably live in Connecticut because it's so beautiful here. And everyone was like, no, but we had a show like in some location in Connecticut, and then a Skylit Drive we saw had a show same day, but like 6 hours or 3 hours, like away from the show that we had, and we like flipped a coin and took a risk to meet up with them to see if they would let us on their show and open for them, and they did. And we were like, "Fuck yeah!" Like the tour manager was cool with us. All the band they're playing with like Dance Gavin Dance and
Nice.
uh, what's that electronic band with the two guys?
Oh, I set myself on fire, or I set my friends on fire, or
They're more of a dancey
oh.
band. They were like, I was just thinking about them the other day. Anyway, yeah, they're from like Colorado or something like that. Anyway,
Oh yeah, yeah. No, not 303. 303?
no, not 303. This is,
Whatever. Who cares? Okay, continue on.
but yeah. So there were a lot of kids in the show. I remember like being in the back and like watching a Skylit Drive's van bounce a lot, and then one of the members and some like super hot girl get out of the van. I'm like,
Oh boy.
like we just got here. So like, yeah, it was an experience for us for sure. And but yeah, we played there. There was like, the place was packed, and then we were like, okay, well, I wonder if I remember talking to you on the phone, and you and I and the rest of the guys were like plotting how can we sneak ourselves onto this whole tour.
Yeah.
And so the tour manager was like cool with it. He was like, sure, yeah, you can open. And so we drove to the next venue, which was 6 hours out of the way, another gamble. And we get there, and the promoter at that show was like, no, you can't, like, we can't add another band to the begin. We were like arguing with him for, I don't know, a while. But we ended up not being able to make that show. And then from there, it kind of all fell off. We kind of just resumed our original scheduled tour.
Yeah.
But yeah,
yeah, that's totally awesome. I mean, that's kind of what you have to do. So did you play? You didn't play that much in the Northwest, though, even though you're from California. Why was that?
I'm not sure.
Probably your booking agent said it wasn't worth the drive.
That might have been what it was. We played there like a few times, maybe just once. I remember we had these like, what are they called? Those, I mean, they used to be called wife beaters, but that's not very PC. But
white tank tops, undershirts.
Sure. But they were red, I think, and they had like I Heart TSW on them. And we were trying to push those at that venue, and people were like laughing. And I was like, dude, it's never that weather here.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, you guys were like, oh yeah, you know, these are cool shirts. And they're like, it's cold here.
Right. We can wear them, but no one will ever see them. Yeah, I remember actually, yeah, I think somehow Puyon from Scary Kids Scaring Kids was, oh yeah, because we played with them once. I like the Puyon, the keyboardist from Scary Kids Scaring Kids, was like repping our gear pretty often, which is pretty awesome.
I remember you played a lot in Texas, like San Antonio was always good. The White Rabbit.
The White Rabbit, that was always a good show, but it was cursed. Because I think, did you tell us it was cursed, or did we think of that on our own? Because like every time, okay, I think, yeah, it was just, we played there, I think a total of 3 times, and every time something happened. I forget what happened the first time, but second time, Marcelo was just plastered. Like there was no hope for that dude. And we were like, because Four Locals back then, they were legal, and Marcelo was like pounding him, and he was so wasted. We got, it was finally our turn to play. The whole time I'm just like freaking out, like, oh, this is gonna be bad. Like I don't know what Marcel's gonna do. I handed him his guitar, ready to go, like plugged in everything, and he just dropped it. And it was like this awful, horrible sound going through the whole sound system. And we were just like, dude. So we played that show without him because he was just too wasted. In the back of the van. But then the next time we played there, we had these light boxes that we would stand on. They'd shoot up halogens. Chad made those. Yeah, we had a lot of cool light stuff, actually, I think, that Chad made. But someone had spilled beer on the floor, and we had a keyboardist then, Trevor, who
Trevor.
When Jason left, because Jason played keyboard and guitar, we needed to replace him with 2 people, a keyboardist and a guitarist. So we just had this keyboardist, and he would play with bare feet sometimes. In that show, we had bare feet, and there was spilt beer on the ground, and somehow it connected with the light, something to do with the light box. Trevor stepped in with his bare foot, touched me on my back at some point, but I didn't know. All I thought was someone came up behind me and was like shaking the shit out of me, and I remember thinking like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of whoever's doing this as soon as they let go. And then I just collapsed, and it was like like movies where like someone blacks out and then they see a circle of heads looking down on them.
Yeah,
it was exactly that. And
you were electrocuted.
I was electrocuted. Yeah, on stage. It was right. Yeah, it was. Thankfully, it was during our last song, so kind of the show just stopped after that for us. But I remember there was this thing where like we saw this show that what's that guy's Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer dude. He puts dogs in their place by like doing this to like some their necks and going and like that was for some reason that it's like a put him in their place sort of move. So we were doing that to each other on this tour nonstop. Whenever someone wasn't be paying attention, we just them. And I remember waking up and Chad reaching in and seeing me. Like, God damn it, dude! I'm like lucky to be alive right now.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was so funny. I feel like, I mean, I never want to. I'm not trying to get into why the band broke up or anything like that, because I don't really want to talk about that generally, because I just think it's like no reason to bring up the. It's never a fun time when bands break up or people leave. But I do feel like there were times when you guys were on your later tours that you had put in the work where you were really drawing people that were coming out to see you, and that I really felt like you were on the precipice of blowing up, or you were just about to get to that point where other big bands were going to ask you to open their tours, but you had been putting in so much work for so long that it's just so hard to see the other side of that. It's like, if we keep doing this, is what we hope will happen going to happen, or is it going to be more of the same?
Right. Yeah, it's hard to see like over the hill.
Did you feel that way? I mean, did you feel like things were going good? And
I mean, I definitely felt like we were able to draw people around the country, which is a great feeling. But like, I think I would say we would probably have to hit a lot of those places like 3 or 4 more times, at least before like we'd be able to consistently draw in a lot of those places. And 3 or 4 times isn't a lot, but it's to get there would be a lot. Like, for example, like in New Hampshire, for example, like getting there is so rough. I think I was thinking about it. I think one thing that we maybe should have experimented with were like shorter tours, because we did our longest tour was like a 3-month tour, and it was intense. Like it was very challenging for physically, emotionally, mentally on all of us. I think that's when I think the longest I went without a shower was 7 days, and then we finally got to shower like on that tour, and then we finally got to shower at some like venue, which was a church, and they had like this back bathroom with no shower curtain, the door locked. But like I remember taking a shower and it like, oh man, it was gross, but like the water looked like pee. And it was because I mean sweating on stage 7 days a week or whatever for 7 days. So like there was a lot of what's the word? Just a lot of things pushing against us in continuing to tour. So I think we kind of like burnt ourselves out a little bit, or a lot in some cases, by touring too much. I think if we were to do it today, like doing like 2-week tours and like a break, or something, breaking it up a little bit more, that'd probably be like better for everybody. Just like put on better shows, play better shows.
I mean, do you feel that there's a lot of these like TikTok videos and YouTube videos of people who are tour managers, or they are real, not without quotes, they're real tour managers, but they're tour managers for like legitimate large bands on major labels, or they're drawing 500 or 1,000 people every night, and they have shows every single day. When you say you were on tour for 3 months straight, I mean, you weren't playing shows every single night, were you?
Right. No, not definitely not. And then, even when we were playing shows for 4 days in a row, like at least one of those shows was like just to the bands, you know.
Right.
But yeah, there were the 3 month tour for sure. There were like, I think we might have gone like a full 5 days without a show at some point during
Right.
that. So like, yeah, it wasn't. But I mean, days off also sucked or could suck because there's like nothing to do, and you're like, especially if there's no drive. It's like 2 hour drive to the next venue. Then we're just like going into malls with headphones and trying to sell CDs. We were decently successful at that, but I mean that took its toll on us too because it's. I mean, like I could, yeah, just approaching people was not none of us are like super social like that. So that kind of thing was hard. Getting kicked out of malls was kind of a pain. So
let's kind of wrap this up a little bit, and I appreciate you doing this. And are there any last stories that just talking about this has kind of like jogged your memory of some fun stories about the subtle way?
Yeah, there's definitely some two stories that come to mind, but I don't know how much time we have. But,
as long as you want.
So the first story, we were playing this Yuma prison, which if you've seen the movie 3:10 to Yuma, it's that prison, which is like it's a historical landmark now.
Okay.
And played there the first time, in Yuma. It's like right on the border of California and Arizona. And we get to the venue, and it's not a venue. It's just a flat plot of land outside, and they're stealing power from the bathroom of this national park, which is technically what it is now. And we're playing. Cops drove up, like there's a hill up in front of you, and we could see like cop cars driving around, but they didn't come down. And it was a great show. Like there were at least like 60 kids at this place, and we sold a ton of merch the first time. We came back the second time, got an actual venue, drew a lot of kids, which was great. And then there was this after party, and we had Trevor, the keyboardist in the band at the time, trying to get laid and talking to these girls, and he's trying to convince me to go, and I'm like, dude, we got to go back to San Diego because we have it. I forget why. And anyway, we eventually went to this party. And we get there, and it's the dude who's throwing the party was at the show, and his older brother, which is like a little more burly of a fellow, is already drunk at his house off Goldschlager, and immediately wants to fight Marcelo because Marcelo is like very attractive scene kid, and I guess it just gets that kind of attention also. So we're in the midst of.
He's got a punchable face. Just kidding.
I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I'm sure this kind of dude would.
Marcelo, as people know when I interview him, is very handsome.
Yeah. Probably like the reason the subtle way is as successful as it was. No, I'm just kidding. But so Marcelo's like got his, he's at this counter making himself a drink, and then I look behind Marcelo, and the guy that was at the show is like, kind of holding his brother back because his brother's like drunk and like talking shit to Marcelo, and Marcelo knows what's going on, but he's trying to like Sun Tzu, the art of war it, and not let the guy know that he knows that he's talking shit. And I realized that this kid holding his brother back is like really struggling, and I'm like, oh, I should probably help him, just like hold him back. But what happened was I threw this older brother down onto the floor, and he slid across the floor and hit his head on this cabinet. And I was like, I did not mean to do that. but then so he gets up, he's all pissed off, and his little brother's like, you guys have to leave right now. And I was like, oh, I know what's going to happen. And I was right. This dude, he goes out into his room and gets a gun.
Holy shit.
Running to the van at this point. The passenger side front door never worked. So we're like having everyone like some people going through the driver's side, some people going through the back door, and I'm driving ready to go, and of course their neighbor like slowly, leisurely comes to my left, so I can't pull out. And I look back, and the dude, he has a gun, but it's like a fucking musket. He's like loading it from the top, but you know,
What?
yeah. So it didn't matter to us. It was still a gun, and we were scared, so we drove off, and then luckily no one got hurt, thankfully. And then like I remember right then we like drove off just out of musket range, and then this his brother came running up and like opened the door that was impossible to open. We were all just like, "Whoa, you opened the door!" Like,
How is he that strong?
Yes, just to like say sorry or whatever. But that was like, yeah, that's the story of the subtle way getting a gun pulled on us. That was, yeah, I always think about that story.
What's the other story that you're
other
mentioning?
one was, yeah, I think it was the end of our 3-month. No, it was a winter tour because it was snowing, and we were in Boomtown, which is right next to Reno in Nevada, and we didn't have a lot of money. So I think it was me that came up with this idea, like, hey, if we go through a drive-through and then someone steals the food from us while we're in the drive-through, they'll have to give us another order, right? And that person that steals the food from us could be one of us, and they'll have no idea. And it's like there's snow everywhere, and they plow the drive-through, of course, and then like the drive-through like curves, and then up here there's like right in front of us there's like this big mound of snow, and there's this big field of snow, and Marcelo volunteers to be the thief. So the plan is, at go time, we're gonna give him the signal. He's on the trailer hitch. He's gonna run up, take the food from me because I'll obviously give him the food, and then they'll have to give us another order. So we give him the signal. He starts running and immediately eats shit because it's like slippery on this icy drive-through, and of course everyone else immediately starts cracking up, and I'm trying to hold a straight face. Then he makes it to the drive-through, and instead of taking the food from me, he takes the food from the cashier, like looks her deep in the eyes, pulls it out of her hands, and starts running in front of the van. And then again, eats shit, drops the food everywhere. And so now everyone's just busting up laughing in the van because it was so fucking funny. But I'm like trying to act like I don't know this dude. And the lady asked, did you know that guy? And I'm just like, no. And Jeff is sitting right next to me, like screaming, laughing. so they end up making us the other, another order, which was fine, great. But so Marcelo, in the meantime, is like picking up all the food he can, like holding it in his hand outside of the bag. His shoe had fallen off, and so he's just running through the snow with one shoe, holding all this food. And later when asking him about it, he was like, yeah. So they sent the security guard after him.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. What did they do?
Yeah, they sent the security guard after him, and he is like, "Shit, I have all this food evidence." So he's like eating the food as fast as he can while running with one foot, no shoe, in a snow field, and then he's like running and eating so fast he throws most of it up, and then he was also. I didn't realize this before, but it made so much sense after. He was super drunk before any of this even started, which might be why he volunteered. But I didn't know that. And so he was like, yeah, I purposefully left my cell phone in the van because I didn't want it to get wet in the snow. I was like, oh, that makes sense. So now I can't contact him. And we're just driving around looking for Marcelo
like how far away did he get?
Less than a mile, I think. His story is he ran through like 2 or 3 shops asking to use a phone, and then he like ran into a bar and realized the security guard was right behind him, so he like ran through the bar and out the back.
Oh my God.
Then eventually found like a 7-Eleven, and he like called. He knew my number, so he called it, and we picked him up there. That was definitely a memorable. Probably the funniest story that I can think of from Subway.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this interview. And I know that there are a lot of people who love the subtle way. And hopefully after this interview, more people will check your old stuff out. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, so I just want to say, Seth, thanks. I want to thank you for like all the stuff that you do, like expressing your clear passion in music and like every way that you can, like being in bands, like pushing music forward, being a label manager, booking agent, everything. It's awesome that people like you exist and do what you do. So thanks for
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. It really does. And I'm so glad that we met. So now so many years later, we're still friends.
Yeah,